transformation, knowledge transfer within your organization. But you on this platform are leaders. And so if you cannot share what you know with the people whom you serve or the people you lead, then you will be a leader of midgets. So even though you be a giant, you will rule over midgets. And I don't think that's what you want. You want to be a ruler of giants. And so it is important that what you know, you share. And you share so that the minimum capacity of the least in your organization is up to par. Next. And so we'll look at talent will flow to where it's needed most. What is knowledge transfer? Why knowledge transfer is important? What prevents knowledge transfer? How to embed it at a personal, team, and corporate level, and the benefits of it. Next. Truth of the matter is, wherever you are, with a little bit of publicity, if you've got talent, you will be found. And that is true because in a knowledge economy, your people are your critical asset. You either grow them for sustainable competitive advantage or you leave them to die. And if you leave them to die, then your organization will likewise die. Next. And so I want to share a story, two stories really. The first story is of Lucy Quist, whom many of you know, and the second story is of Vodafone Ghana. Lucy worked in Scotland as a banker. She then joined Tigo in Ghana, and then she moved to DRC. And then when she came back to Ghana, she joined Vodafone. After a while, she was headhunted and she became the CEO of Airtel. After she left Airtel, she was headhunted and she's back in Morgan Stanley doing banking. The next story I'm going to tell you is about Vodafone Ghana taking over Ghana Telecom in 2008. If I'm wrong, I'm sure Fitnat can correct me. She's on the call. And when Vodafone took over Ghana Telecom, the first CEO was a Brit. He was British. The second CEO was British. The third CEO was Greek. The fourth CEO was South African. The fifth CEO is Ghanaian. The interesting thing is that Vodafone went to England to hunt for talent initially. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that if we do not back up, then somebody will come and eat our dinner as leaders. And somebody will come and take over our organization as leaders. And the story of Lucy is quite instructive because every time she moved with competitive, sustainable competitive advantage. That advantage was in her head. And so that created value for her to move. It means that each one of us really should be creating personal value. This is over and above knowledge transfer in the first instance. Each one of us should be creating personal value and then transferring that personal value to our teams and our organizations. The fact that it took Vodafone 5 attempts before employing a Ghanaian to be CEO should tell you that if we don't back up, the organization will go somewhere else and go and bring a foreigner to come and lead the company. So we can either sit there and sleep or back up and take what is ours. Brit, Greek, South African, before a Ghanaian. the fifth attempt. The fifth attempt. So if we do not demonstrate that we have capacity and we have capability and the competence, then I'm afraid somebody else in Greece, in New Zealand, in another country will be employed to come to Ghana, earn dollars, and you will complain that why is my salary not enough? It is imperative that over and above the knowledge transfer, the first people we grow is ourselves. Next. Next. Clarence, next.
I think it's taking a bit of time because of the internet.
Okay. All right. So can you go back one, please? Okay, so what, can you go back one, please? Thank you. So in essence, what is knowledge transfer? It simply is, it simply is It simply is the wide diffusion of value enhancing knowledge for self and your team. For self and your team. And the truth of the matter is that as a leader, your primary role is to create leaders. It's not to rule, it's to create leaders. And so if you're a leader in an organization and you're not creating leaders, then I have to question your leadership role. And in terms of knowledge, really, there are two types. There is the tacit, which is the personal experience that is acquired, and there's the explicit, which is generally available. And typically, what you try to share is both of them, but more importantly, the tacit knowledge, which you have gained as a leader leading the organization. But why is knowledge transfer so important? Next. I'll say that he who keeps the knowledge has the power. Typically, we say knowledge is power. And that is true, because ignorance is not bliss. But more importantly, the single biggest driver of business impact is the strength of an organization's learning culture. And that learning culture will come from you sharing your knowledge, your insight, and being intentional about knowledge transfer and growth. Let's look at some of the importance of knowledge transfer. Next. In a persistent, volatile market environment, you cannot afford to stay with old knowledge for new situations. When the situation changes, the approach must change. When the situation changes, the approach must change. And in a constantly evolving market environment, it means that we need to change at an even faster rate. The speed of change and disruption, I have to tell you, this is the slowest that we are ever going to experience change. This is the slowest change we are ever going to experience. And when you share knowledge, it means we speak the same language. It means there's congruence, uniformity in the knowledge that we have. Remember, you are as strong as your weakest link. And if your weakest link doesn't know, then you're weak, indeed. When you share knowledge, you bring innovation and creativity. Remember that your people are your competitive advantage. I deliberately used Lucy Quist as my opening example because every time Lucy moved, she was moving with insights, information, knowledge, which made her valuable, and that is why they purchased her. And remember that your competitive advantage is mobile because it resides in human beings. And so, therefore, if you don't transfer the tacit information, you'll be stuck. The person will walk away, and that will be it. You know, it's interesting that the previous CEO of Vodafone left Vodafone Ghana and marched straight into MTN South Africa. What do you do then? What do you do when your competitive advantage walks into your competitor's shop and says, "Here I am, take me"? Frankly, to be fully optimized, there should be knowledge equilibrium as much as possible. And so when knowledge exists in silos, you will not find organizational growth. Okay? And knowledge transfer is a risk mitigation because it means that you're not going to reinvent the wheel. It means that we're all speaking from the same hymn sheet. Next. So, and why knowledge transfer? It ensures accumulated organizational knowledge remains within the organization to maintain a baseline of expertise. It creates an environment where creativity and innovation happens naturally and regularly, and necessary when knowledge is at risk, strategic or essential to day-to-day business functioning. So when somebody like Lucy goes to Airtel, if you don't have your knowledge codified or documented, you're done. Share value, useful information within a meaningful context so that it can be used when making decisions and taking actions. And then, of course, for succession planning, operational excellence, overall success of an organization, operational excellence is important that we are able to share information that we have on a common platform. But what is it that prevents the knowledge transfer? And that's quite interesting. Some of you may know that, I'm going to give examples which you would identify. You know, in Ghana, we fear sharing knowledge. In Ghana, we fear sharing knowledge because we don't want our subordinates to come and overtake us. Okay? And so we take pride in keeping the knowledge to ourselves. Next, we take pride in keeping the knowledge to ourselves. And we don't share. But the point is that if you are growing, you're never afraid to share information. And it's really sad because it hampers the development and growth of the organization. And then some people hoard knowledge because knowledge is power. So politically, they hoard the knowledge. I mean, I've been in an organization where a colleague will come and get all the knowledge he can from you, but never share any knowledge with you because for him, it was an interesting way of acquiring power. And then there's the me, not we type of mentality. That is, if I know it and you don't know it, then it gives me an advantage over you. And there's a lack of a culture of sharing. Simple. And then I say it is incongruent to our nature, culture. What do I mean by that? When I was growing up, um, when you ask the question, I put my hand up and say, I know. And then soon afterwards, they started calling me Kweku Minim Minim. Oyetuno. So if you live in a cultural environment where children are not able to express what they know, soon when you grow up and somebody opens their mouth to share, what do you say? They are too known. But it is sharing knowledge, it's sharing information that actually takes us forward. So that culture of you're too known is a barrier to knowledge transfer. And then when people share knowledge, they are not rewarded. If anything at all, they are discouraged from sharing the knowledge. In some organizations, there is no planned, structured way to share knowledge. And if it's not planned and it's not measured, it won't get done. Most organizations are not intentional about knowledge transfer. There are no champions, there is no leadership buy-in, and frankly, sometimes we are just lazy, lazy to grow. And so there's no drive to grow our minds, and dare I say it, there's a lack of a growth mindset. So in some organizations, even if you give the people all the stuff, they won't bother. Okay. But that is dangerous. Next. And I'll tell you why. Next. So embedding, next please, embedding the knowledge in the organization is not difficult. It's not difficult at all. It's not difficult at all because it can be done on a personal one-on-one. It can be done on a mentorship basis. It can be done on a coaching basis or in a team. The team is the engine of the corporate. So you can treat it as a whole and nurture the team. You can create cross-functional teams. You can have secondment, job swaps, job shadowing. And organization-wide, you can have a knowledge management system, codification of the knowledge, forced training, rewarding of knowledge transfer, and workshops. When I worked in Vodafone, quite often there would be training courses that we would have to do. And you would have to go online on the intranet to complete those courses. And if you didn't complete those courses, it counted against you. So it's very clear those who had done the training and those who hadn't done the training. But for intranet, you can have videos, podcasts, articles, lunchtime trainings, professional support lawyers. In a couple of law firms that I worked in, they had lawyers whose role it was to create knowledge, for the lawyers. Okay? And so these were lawyers whose only role was to create knowledge for the lawyers. So they scanned the horizon, the environment, they got new information, they put them in articles, and they supplied it to you to read. Apprenticeship, digital ninja. Here, I mean, if you are 50 plus and you don't understand digital, You can get a young person who's a digital ninja to come and support you with digital learnings. Cross-functional team, legal to finance, finance to technology. In Vodafone, we used to hold legal days, and we would go from department to department to inform the different functions of our role, what we did, and to get them to be more acquainted with what we were doing. It is important that right at the beginning, if you can, you hire curious people, because curious people are typically learners. And then you, as the leader, should lead by example. You should start at the top, and there should be a culture of learning and sharing next. This culture of learning and sharing is really important. What I see in Ghana is that we confuse qualification with education. I'm sorry, I'm going to be very blunt. We confuse qualification with education. So you meet somebody and they'll tell you, I have an MBA. What they don't realize is that it's not the qualification I need the application of what you learned. So regurgitation, chew, pour, pass and forget is not good enough where there's no application. So please, if you are driven by qualification, make sure that you are also driven by the application of what you have learned. And I'm sorry to say this, but a large number of MBAs in Ghana are not worth the paper they are printed on. I'm sorry to say this, but that is true. You see, the Chinese are not sleeping. The Indians are not sleeping. The English are not sleeping. And the benchmark is not Ghana mark. The benchmark is a global mark. So you have to ask yourself, am I making it on the global mark, or am I just looking for the local mark? Is my benchmark local or global? With the earth being flat, or the world being flat, if Vodafone needs a CEO, they can go to Greece, they can go to Scotland, they can go to England, they can go to South Africa to go and bring a CEO. So the competition is global, not local. So if you have an MBA and you are listening to me today, ask yourself, can I compete on a global level? If not, then you need to do something about it. Because otherwise, somebody else will come and eat your dinner. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that your organization will collapse. Okay, so knowing the answer to the question is less critical than knowing the right questions to ask. That is where we've got into now. That is where we've got into. Next. So ask yourself, am I growing my mind? And I say this, we resist the personal transformation process because there's no certificate at the end. Sorry, go back. We resist the personal transformation agenda because there's no certificate at the end. And the truth of the matter is, you can't give what you don't have. So what are you going to share if you don't have it? How are you going to share what you don't have? If you as the leader don't grow your mind, are not growing your mind in the organization, how are you going to share what what you don't have. So as leaders, our primary responsibility, number one, is to grow our minds. Then we will have something to share and transfer to those that we lead. And most Ghanaians will ask, do I get a certificate? Goodness me. If there's no certificate, I won't go. If there is no certificate attached, I won't go. Is it the paper that makes it useful, or is it the knowledge that you gain? It is application, not regurgitation. And so, even in organizations, when people go for training, they are complaining about the food, they are complaining about the hotel, and the focus is not on the knowledge that they are gaining to add value to the organization that they work for or they work in. Please, the Chinese are coming, the Indians are coming, the South Africans are coming. And when they come, they will take our jobs. When they come, they will outshine us. In Korea, if you're a secondary school student, this is the saying they have. 4 hours pass, 6 hours fail. What that means is that in Korea, for secondary school students, if you sleep for 4 hours, you will pass. If you sleep for 6 hours, you will fail. When Ghana obtained independence in 1957, our GDP was about twice what it was of that of Korea. It was at least twice that of Korea, South Korea, I mean. I don't need to tell you where we are now. Next. Look, millions will have to change occupation as automation takes place. Millions of us will have to change occupations as automation takes place. The demand is going to be for an increase for high cognitive skills. Bold and frequent upskilling will be necessary for the future. And that future is like 5 years away. Lifelong learning will be required if you are able to play in the new world. So this is an impassioned plea to the leaders on this call that before you begin to transfer knowledge, you should do an audit on yourself and ask yourself, am I growing my mind? Am I adding value to me before I begin to transfer that knowledge? Next. The personal transformation means you as leaders, you need to think global even though you're acting local. You need to position yourself to be a global superstar. Carpe diem. Seize the moment. Seize the day. The world is flat and your skills are in demand if you have the skills. Grow your mind and become a T-shaped professional. T-shaped professionals have depth in their subject matter area and have breadth in adjacent areas so that they can be useful to the adjacent while being experts in their field. You know, to add value wherever you are, ask for more knowledge if need be. An enhanced mind is rewarded with greater remuneration. So if you look at your remuneration, there are two factors. Either your organization is not making a profit or you are not adding value. Okay? But whatever it is, if you add value to your mind, you will be of value to your organization. Your impact will depend on your growth. The world is changing. If you don't change, you'll be left behind. This is the slowest you are going to experience change. This is the slowest you and I are going to experience change. Now, don't ask what your company can do for you. Ask what you can do for your company. I have an MBA, and I say, demonstrate what you have done, can do, will do. The popular refrain is, I have a master's, so I have an MBA, so remember, I'm saying this is critical. Remember that your classic MBA, if it's Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, it has a shelf life of maximum 5 years. Okay? If it is in Ghana and it is from one of the local universities, frankly, the shelf life is a year. Unless you go on a journey of lifelong learning, then your MBA becomes of incredible value. Seriously, those of you listening to me today, if you have an MBA, ask yourself, ask yourselves, since my MBA, have I added any other value to me? What am I reading? Have I grown? When was the last time I opened a book and read? When was the last time I read something like Harvard Business Review or McKinsey Quarterly or Sloan MIT or The Economist? If you're not adding value, somebody else will come and chop your dinner. So I say, grow or die. Next. And so the benefits are quite simply, you reduce, if there's knowledge transfer, you reduce the time from hire to productivity because there's somebody there to share. It reduces staff attrition and reduces the risk of making decisions absent of historical facts. It allows you to capture knowledge before it leaves. Classic example, Lucy. It enhances the organization's ability to make better decisions because we have a historical precedent. So that would be your baseline. It streamlines processes. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It creates greater collaboration and enables the organization to leverage on what it already knows. Next. What about the process? I would say that a little learning is dangerous. So drink deep or taste not the peering spring. Shallow draughts intoxicate the brain. Drinking largely sobers us up again. If you're going to do it well. And don't tinker with it and avoid. Can you go next? So the process is to identify the knowledge that is required to do the job and identify knowledge of value that should be transferred, and prioritize the risk of losing that knowledge and capture it. So there are some people in our organizations who are regrettable leavers when they leave. Those people, you should capture their knowledge before they go. And you should determine the best approach to capture and transfer. And you should keep that knowledge up to date. But this isn't a one-off process. This should be a continuous process, regularly conducted. Next. And the leader's role in this transfer is that the leader should be supporting and championing the knowledge transfer and walking the talk, creating value and a culture which supports knowledge transfer, and rewarding and recognizing those who are proactive in sharing and creating knowledge, and being intentional, planning it, measuring it, and rewarding it. The point is that if you don't plan it, it won't get done. If you don't plan it, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, it won't get done. So organizations should be intentional about transferring knowledge across the board, across the organization. What is the manager's role? The manager's role is to prioritize critical knowledge, plan ahead for any transition. He has got to identify the knowledge and who needs that knowledge and develop a knowledge transfer plan. And monitor and support the transfer process. The truth is that if you do not reward, recognize, or remunerate transfer, nobody will do it. And so that ought to be part of the process. Otherwise, nobody will do it. Now, there are two critical ways by which all of this can be done. And the first way is the personal way, which is one-on-one coaching, mentoring, team nurturing. The other way is organizational-wide transformation, codification, organizational-wide codification. And so you have to choose. If you have a small team, then it may be that you will go for a small one-on-one type knowledge transfer. If you have a large team, then maybe you'll go for codification, where you keep all the knowledge in a central point. The choice is yours. Really, the choice as to which route you take is yours. But you cannot do without transferring the knowledge in your organization. Is it going to be through training? Is it going to be through cross-functional teams? Is it going to be through secondment? Is it going to be through lunchtime training, intranet training? Whatever it is, you need to be intentional about how you go about this process. And if you don't, then I'm afraid at best your organization will remain mediocre. And if there is resistance, if you're in an organization, frankly, and there is resistance to transferring of knowledge, then it should tell you that in the near future, your organization is going to have a problem. Because the marketplace and the rapid change is not going to stop. And so if your organization doesn't allow, enable, encourage, then you're going to have a problem. So I've said here the literates of the 21st century will not be those who can read and write, but those who are able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. What do you want to be, illiterate or literate? It's up to you. If your organization is not transferring knowledge, then demand it. Otherwise, move out, because you know that that organization will not survive the coming winter. Now, let me say this as an addition. The human being, man, is not the fastest animal, is not the biggest animal, is not the tallest animal, is not the strongest animal, is not the longest living animal. But somehow, man has been able to take control and command the earth. And there are two qualities that allow you to survive and thrive. One is adaptability, and two is curiosity. As leaders, it is important that we bring adaptability in terms of our mindset, a growth mindset to our organizations. And two, we engender curiosity. Otherwise, we'll sit here and the Indians will come, the South Africans will come, the Greeks will come, the English will come, and we will complain that some small boy or some small girl has come to become CEO of a leading organization in Ghana. The reverse is also true. Like I said, and I'm using Lucy Quist as an example. She became the competitive advantage in the organization. She moved from Tigo to Vodafone and became CEO of Airtel. Now she's a director at Morgan Stanley. So you have a choice. You have a choice, first of all, to grow your mind, and then secondly, to grow your organization by the transfer of knowledge and the transfer of the insights that are resident in your organization. I'm going to stop here and take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Theodore Albright. Quite an insightful presentation. The process of learning, unlearning, and relearning indeed is never ending. And in a global society as we now find ourselves, evolution is also constant. So we need to go with or grow with the global evolution by learning, unlearning, and relearning. At this point, we'd like to take some questions. Would take three in batches of three. Then would have our speaker respond to it. So you can unmute your mic, raise your hand, unmute your mic, and ask your question. Okay. Mark Urban, kindly unmute and go ahead. Mark Urban, you can unmute and go ahead with your question. Am I being heard?
I can hear you.
Okay.
And maybe Tony
Mark,
Hassan would like to.
yeah.
Tony Hassan has his hand up. Thank you.
Anthony Hassan, kindly unmute and ask your question.
Okay.
Mr. Hassan, do you want to ask your question, please?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Actually, our mics have been muted, and there's little we could do. I'm sure it has been identified, and so I have been released.
Is there a problem?
And it's okay now. It's okay for me now. Thank you very much. So, Theodore, thanks for the insightful presentation, especially touching on the very critical aspect of what the future holds for knowledge and application of same. My question is about traditional indigenous organizations that are soaked up in culture. And when I say culture in Ghana, our culture is really cultural, very deep with strong roots. Now, if it's an organization where really learning has never been part of a culture, if it's an organization where at the top we do not have a learning leader, how do you how would you say we should approach learning in this organization, especially if you are not the very top person to make that decision? Thank you very much.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. There are two ways of doing that. The first is that you have a team, so you can coach your team. So that's the first thing. And you can reward for the information assimilation. The second is actually you can support your CEO by actually providing him or her with information, critical information to guide. And so this is another way of coaching, except that it's kind of underhanded. By supplying your boss, if your boss is amenable to snippets of books and data and articles. I mean, you and I know that in our former roles, the then CEO said, if you want to know anything, go and ask Theodore or Ebenezer, because she acknowledged that we were the resident experts within the organization when it came to knowledge development, growth of mindset, and so on. And on many occasions, we were given the opportunity to go on an internal radio program to broadcast and share the knowledge that we had. But you can start small with your team and reward your team for the knowledge acquisition. And if the inherent culture in the organization is not, I mean, it can either be anti or is one that has not thought about it, then you can make a suggestion. Tony, if you recall, by the time I was leaving Vodafone, there were at least 2 floors that had libraries with books for people to read. And that wasn't an accident. It was designed to stimulate thinking and reading and growing your mind in the organization. And so you could start a reading club, a book club, and gather people, not only from your team, but the 10% or 20% who are interested in growing their mind. That would be a start. You can't win everybody, but you can win some. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take Mark Abba's question now. Apologies, Mark.
All right, thank you very much. My question is somehow a follow-up to what the first participant asked. Now, I want to give 2 scenarios. I've worked with private firm and I've also worked with a multinational company. Now, in situation where it is very obvious that you're sharing the knowledge for somebody to benefit from the knowledge. And I will not mention the company, but I have a situation where somebody is brought to you to be mentored or to be trained only for the person to take over you and take a role and get even a higher salary or higher pay than you. After you finish teaching the person, you are shown the exit tactically, let me put it that way. And then you have a situation where the people who are supposed to get the knowledge not cut out for the role. Instead of giving you the opportunity to take the role and to do a competent work, they will rather want to sift from you for you to share the knowledge to the people who are occupying the role and are not competent. So in this case, would you want that we should still go ahead and share the knowledge, or I should keep in my silo? Thank you.
Okay, so I've been in a situation where I've written articles in a law firm. I've written articles, given it to the managing partner. He scanned it, put his name to it, and right at the bottom in the footnote, he says, and I give attribution to the support received from Theodore Albright. I've also been in a situation where I've written the article, I've given it to a partner, and my name doesn't appear anywhere on the article. The point I'm making, though, and this is really important, is that you develop yourself for global, not local. I understand that is a fear, that's a common fear in Ghana, where we play on he who knows or stores his knowledge becomes powerful. I really and truly believe that in growing your mind in the first instance, you're not afraid to share. And if it is the case that you grow and you share and they come and take you out and they push you out, then the truth is that the organization has not recognized the value that you bring, or we're simply dealing with politics. And as for politics, whether you're green, blue, yellow, or white, the politics in every organization exists. And sometimes you need to learn how to play that politics. Other times you just have to say to yourself, this is not the sort of environment that I want to thrive in or survive in, so I'll move on. And so if they are pushing you out, as often happens, that is unfortunate. If the person is capturing your knowledge so that they will use it, and again, that is unfortunate. That happens. It happens everywhere. What is important is to grow your mind. Because as you grow your mind, you become more valuable not only for where you are, but where you're going to go next. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the next question from Oredu Yeboah.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for a very insightful lecture. I think I've enjoyed every bit of it. And as a student of lifelong learning, I'm a bit concerned because it appears that it's becoming like a national issue or a cultural issue in Ghana. Because I think some years ago, we all witnesses to teachers going on strike simply because they've been asked to do a certain professional exams or something to upskill themselves. That one alone made them go on strike, and there were a lot of agitations around there. And I was very much disappointed. If these people are supposed to be teaching us to learn from them, and they are resisting upgrading themselves or writing the professional exams to make sure they are at par with a certain standard, then it's a problem. And it's not only at the teachers' front. Learning and knowledge sharing in Ghana, I would say, is mainly common in multinationals companies in Ghana. Many of the private firms do not see why they should spend money on staff to train them. Then many people in government institutions, I don't know, and I'll be interested to know the budget that they allocate for training and how it trickles down to the lower level, because it's mainly at the upper level who will take opportunity of this and then travel outside for some small perks and other things. Theodore, my main question is that how can we catapult this change for the nation, not at the individual level, not at the corporate level, but at the national level? I know individuals, once we start doing something collectively or in aggregate, it may mean something, but that will take too long a time. How can we leapfrog into a situation where the whole nation will be a learning nation, and Ghana will produce a lot of global managers in various countries and various multinationals? How can we do that? What's your suggestion?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me say this. Never in the history of humankind has knowledge been so democratized. Never in the history of mankind has knowledge been so democratized. Look, when you ask somebody, what book are you reading? They'll tell you they're reading Facebook. Okay? As a nation, we're not serious. Full stop. You know, if it were something else, you go on the internet and find out how to do it. Okay? We, beyond a certain age, we have an obligation to ourselves to grow our minds. And you don't, at that point, need a teacher or anybody else to guide you. My mother is going to be 80. When she has a problem, she just goes online and she'll ask Dr. Google, how do I do this? And then it comes up. Or she goes to YouTube and then she watches a YouTube video. 80 years old. So what's your excuse if you're 22 or 23 or 24? If you don't upskill, you will live in poverty. We will live in poverty. And we will be at the behest of other nations because we don't have the insight to add value to the resources. Look, our major concern in Ghana, with Ghana as a nation, is not about resource. It is human capacity. Our inability to know what to do with the resources that God has blessed us with: gold, bauxite, uranium, the whole works. Just updating our insights and knowledge will enable us to leapfrog. There's nothing in Britain. When you go to Britain, in Scotland, they've got oil. In Newcastle, they've got coal. In Cornwall, they've got tin. That's it. Everything else they sell is intellectual. Everything else they sell is intellectual. So when you ask somebody, which would you rather watch, Kotoko or Man United? He'll tell you Man United. Okay? If you ask them, what's the lineup for Man United? They'll tell you. But they have no clue as to the 3 or 4 things we need to do to take the nation forward. So you as a leader need to reward learning and growth. And the transformation that needs to take place is a growth mindset within the country. And to my mind, it's very simple, it's very easy if we want to do. But I have a metric that 10% will do, 90% will sleep. And that cuts across everywhere in the world. So that is why 10% of the world's wealthiest people own 90% of the world's wealth. Because we are not willing to do what the 10% will do. And so the 90% will always be slaves to the 10%. If we don't want to be slaves to the 10%, then we should wake up. And everything rises and falls on leadership. So we need to start at the top. The leader sets the tone. The leader sets the tone. Wherever you are, you need to set the tone. And you need to walk the walk. Thank you. AC Asante.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Albright, for your presentation. Very, very insightful. And the first thing I want to comment on is your comment that our master's degrees in Ghana, for instance, have just a 1-year shelf life. I beg to differ. Maybe you would have to explain that a little bit, because I am speaking from the point of view of academia, because I'm a lecturer, I teach. And some of the things you have discussed in your presentation today are things we discuss with our students. Even today, I was discussing some contemporary issues in human resource management with my students. And we were talking about this issue of knowledge transfer, talent management. We talk about the fact that millions of jobs would be changing in the near future if we don't do something, and so forth. It's not as if the knowledge is not there. We know, but how to apply it. So I would want to differ with you when you say that our degrees here have just a 1-year shelf life. Perhaps not the fault of the learning institutions. Maybe it is the students who are not applying what we are teaching them. But I can tell you that we are doing our bits and so forth. And then secondly, I also wanted to talk about, I think you were speaking from the perspective of addressing leaders and not the followers. What about the followers? What you have not really given us anything on what followers also should do to enhance their knowledge transfer and sharing. Because of course, if the leaders up there are not inclined to it, then what can the followers do? You know, so I think that even as you address the leaders, you should also talk to the followers and what they can do in their own way, their personal lives to gather this knowledge, transfer it, and also share. And then finally, I also wanted to touch on what Mark talked about, where you are always required to share the knowledge, but you are not acknowledged for it. I mean, for how long can you keep on sharing knowledge and nobody acknowledges you for it? And you need it also to grow. If for instance, Lucy, if Lucy were not acknowledged for the knowledge she had gathered, I'm not sure she would have moved up the ladder the way she had done it. So sometimes it is important that when people share the knowledge, they must be recognized for it, or I mean, accorded, I mean, some form of recognition. because it's not easy. I worked also with a multinational company, and all the time I was required to provide the knowledge, but nobody was recognizing me for it. People come from outside, they know nothing. They come, you have to teach them virtually everything. And then they think they know more than you see? And then when they hit the wall, they come back to you. So I would want you to address some of these issues for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'll take the last one first. I totally agree that in order to encourage knowledge transfer, it needs to be remunerated, it needs to be rewarded, and it needs to be recognized. In my case, what I then did was I wrote the articles, and I looked for publications, and I sent them to those publications, and they published them for me. So with the advent of social media, it is very easy as somebody who has knowledge to broadcast it on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. It is very easy to write articles and have them published. I mean, BNFT, they're always looking for people who have content to give. So if you're not recognized within your organization, you should begin to look outside of your organization. But I admit that it is a painful situation to be in, where you are not recognized for what you know. The next thing I'll deal with is the issue of the shelf life of our degrees. The truth of the matter is that I have taught students, and I'll say this, that whenever I have encountered those who have completed master's degrees, particularly MBAs, it only takes a question or two for you to see that there's a deficiency. You see, our education system is based on chew, pour, pass, and forget, not application. Not application. I remember when I was interviewed to be an adjunct lecturer, I was asked this question, Mr. Albright, how are you going to deal with APO? And I said, APO is not an issue, because in my class, I don't mind giving you the questions for the exams. What I need to see is how you apply it. There are very few courses in Ghana where application is key. In most courses, you are required to pour what the lecturer has taught you. And if you write outside of what the lecturer has taught you, you'll be in trouble. So when you say that it is not true, it is not true.
Yeah,
it is not true to the extent that
a webinar.
I'm sorry.
Online webinar. We are having a webinar.
It is not true. Sorry, whoever it is, can you mute, please? Can you mute, please? Hello, can you mute, please? Can you mute, please? So it is not true to the extent that you are asking your students to pour what you've taught them and not to apply their own knowledge to what they have learned. And this is a challenge that I put to you, Madam Essie. Do you ask your students to apply, or do
yes, Mr. Albright, I do a lot of application in my class. Like you are saying, you can have the book in front of you, but the kind of question I'll give you to solve is practical. It's a case or something.
Okay.
So that is what I do. Thank you.
Then you are one in a million, because every single Ghanaian trained person on this call will acknowledge that if you don't chew and pour and pass and pour, you won't get anywhere. You will not get anywhere. Ghanaian education has never been about application. It's always been about regurgitation. And so the students leave the place not being able to apply what they have learned. And that is why I say, and I've encountered countless students. And it only takes 2 questions for me to see the deficiency in the education that they have received. I'm sorry to say this, but we are looking at global benchmarks, not local benchmarks. Local maybe is okay, but global, but the competition is not local, the competition is global. So that's the question that you need to ask. Are my students capable of working in the global market? If they are not, then they're not fit for purpose. The second one, please, what was the second question?
My second question was on the followers, what we are doing for the followers, since you've already addressed the leaders.
Thank you very much. My definition of leadership is anybody who inspires, who influences, who informs himself and others to think better, do better, be better for positive impact. So we are all leaders, except that we are different ranks of the organization. The first person you lead is yourself. So I don't see anybody as a follower. I see everybody as a leader. First of all, leading themselves and then going on to lead others. And that's what leaders should do, create more leaders. So sometimes you can be middle management and be a leader and influence, like Tony was asking, and influence up and influence laterally and influence downwards. So everybody's a leader. Everybody's a leader. That is why I've not focused on followers. We are all leaders. And that's how we should see ourselves. Thank you. Jerry Wachi.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Albright.
Hello, Jerry.
Hi. Thank you very much, Mr. Albright. I'm really enjoying the conversation. Thanks for the presentation. Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So, first
Jerry,
of all,
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, before I make
I can hear you.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mr. Albright concerning our MBA. I did my MBA in Ghana here. I will not mention the name of the institution, but I can tell you that it's just show and pour, and the application base is quite low. So I think it's an area that we really need to scale up. And if we want to be global, I mean, we want to be able to compete globally, we need to really scale up, I mean, the kind of content that we use out there for our MBA programs. Now, my other question is, you know, the issue about knowledge transfer is critical, but how do you also juxtapose that with execution? Because I think in our part of the world, the biggest challenge we have is the execution. We have fantastic ideas, great concepts, great knowledge, but the challenge we have is execution. And it's because execution is difficult, it's challenging. So it's always a big problem. I mean, the knowledge is transferred, but when it comes to execution, we are deficient. We are not able to execute. Sometimes we have a lot of...
Jerry, let me help you here. Jerry.
Yes.
Jerry, let me help you here. The problem is never execution. The problem is never execution. If you have a problem executing, it means you haven't thought hard enough about what you are going to do. So the problem is your strategy to deliver. It's not execution. It's never execution. Execution is not hard. It's the thinking that goes on to the strategy. If your strategy does not include how am I going to execute? What barriers am I going to overcome? How do I overcome those barriers? No scenario planning. Then you haven't done the necessary strategic planning. So it's not execution. It is your strategy that is defective. Okay? If you have thought long and hard about your execution in the strategy phase, you would have thought about what are the scenarios, what if, what not, and then you would have put mitigations in place to address that. The fact that you haven't got those mitigations in place tells me that you didn't think hard enough. So it's not execution. It is right at the beginning. Your strategy is defective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Desiree. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
You're next. Hi. Okay.
Oh, okay.
No. Sorry,
So,
it's Solomon. Solomon. Yeah.
Yeah, Solomon here. You made quite a lot of reference to Lucy and her introduction into Ghana from the UK, her travel to DRC to Vodafone. When Lucy joined Ghana to go, she was coming from UK. Yeah, and then she went on. Worked with her in Togo, worked with her in Vodafone.
Yeah.
Okay, so a few other things I want to find out. Lucy came down with a degree from the UK. One of the things we noticed around the time was a lot of people were coming down. A lot of people who came down with degrees from the UK got quite a lot of the good positions, because when she came on, quickly made Northern Sector commercial head and later sent to DRC. One of the things I want to find out is your source of education doesn't matter in terms of you getting the dough, because you were talking about people coming in and taking the dough. That's one of the things I'm looking to find out. So where you get education, does it matter? The other thing.
Let me answer, and then you can come back. Let me come. Where you get your education is critical. And that is why I'm saying here that some of our master's programs, they have a shelf life of 1 year. It is critical because there's no application involved. And so when you go onto the competitive market, you'll be found wanting. Lucy came with a degree in engineering and a master's from INSEAD, an MBA from INSEAD.
Yep.
Okay, where you get your education, sadly, is important. So when Madam Essie challenges me, I would say that we have not lifted the bar in Ghana. Frankly, most of what I see is mediocre.
Well, sometimes I'm tempted to say it may or may not. I think you know Niboy Ajay.
No, I don't.
Okay, because Niboy Ajay was the commercial director for. Oops.
Oh yes, Niboy. Yes, Niboy.
Yes,
yeah.
Niboy Ajay.
Yeah. I do know
locally
Niboy.
Schooled, fantastic brain, and if not for, I'd also say I think Niboy left Vodafone because he was not too sure where the direction would be under the Greek we're talking about. But he got a better job somewhere else. So one of the things I sometimes wonder is it for Patricia and where she is now, and for Yolanda.
I'm sorry?
South African.
Sorry,
Yolanda was a strategist. I was saying because you're talking about Yolanda was a strategist. The Greek was an administrator because had to put things right. Yolanda come to put in certain strategies, and Patricia is supposed to hold the fort and make it and run it for a while. I think she's done quite a good job though. Now back to the main thing that I want to find out for all of us here.
Yeah.
So how do we present ourselves to be selected for the knowledge we have?
Grow your mind. Grow your mind. Grow your mind. And the first thing is to grow your mind. The second thing is to exhibit your wares. Everybody likes an expert. Okay. And so you need to create some waves around you. Okay. So everybody likes an expert. Everybody wants to work with an expert. Everybody wants somebody who will come and solve their solutions. Nobody wants to witness an employee, especially at a high level. So grow your mind, and then exhibit your words. Those are the two things I'll say. And exhibit your words would be short articles on LinkedIn, short videos demonstrating your knowledge. In fact, conducting webinars. What do you think I'm doing today? That's exactly what I'm doing today. Yeah.
Exactly.
I am showing that I have the capacity to do. And so grow your mind and then show your words. I have to say, though, that having a network and being able to rub shoulders and who you know, these are all important, and being politically savvy, all of those are important. But the two critical aspects are growing your mind and exhibiting your words. And that then makes you a global phenomenon. And so it's not Ghana, it's the world. Your competition should be with the world, not Ghana. If you are trying to compete in Ghana, then you have failed.
Okay. With that goes my next question, because sort of in line. So how do you handle superiors who are threatened by your depth of knowledge? How do you handle superiors who are threatened by your depth of knowledge?
Run away. Truth of the matter is that when you have a superior who feels threatened by your knowledge, there is nothing, sincerely, there is nothing you can do to assuage their inferiority complex. Unless you kowtow, oh yes, boss, and you lick boot. Even that, most often doesn't work. Most often doesn't work. And so, so what I would say is that ask to be shifted to a different department if that is possible. Otherwise, you need to play a political game and maybe even have a godfather within the organization. Now, these are not strategies that I would normally recommend, but I've seen it where individuals are threatened by knowledgeable persons and they seek to crush them because they have an inferiority complex. And that is Ghana for you, I'm afraid.
I do associate to the fact that you should have a godfather, because I've done that before and it's worked. The last question, which I would want to push across, is how do people coming up get the opportunity to one, use whatever they are learning in school or have learned in school, versus also gaining some experience? What I've come to realize is, for most, exactly what you're saying, most of our education teaches us things which probably we've not experienced. For most people, at the time they did their MBA, they didn't really need it because they were not at that point of influence where they'll really be needing that knowledge they're using, even sometimes for the degree as well. How do people get, as they are getting education, get that on the job experience as well to help them make sure that they're becoming very practical as much as possible?
Okay, I'm sitting somewhere and somebody calls me, Mr. Albright, please. I understand you run a family office. I said yes. I want to come and work with you so that I'll gain experience. My first question is, what book are you reading? And she says, what has that got to do with my wanting to come and work with you? And you see, behind that question of what are you reading is a subtext. What new information are you gathering and adding to your knowledge base in view of the constantly changing global economy so that you can add value? If you are not curious and you're not adaptable, you're not good to me. Frankly, you're useless. So the sooner we all become curious and become adaptable and grow our minds, the sooner we will be able to lift up Ghana as a place to do business. If you are not growing your minds, if we are not collectively growing our minds, then we are sunk. Then we are going to be a vassal state to some superpower, be it India, Brazil, China, Russia, or America, or Britain, or EU. We'll become a vassal state to those countries.
Okay, thank you very much. My request would be probably your next one, if you could help us on strategies or routes to use to get C-suite jobs. It would be quite interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so C-suite jobs require that you have an understanding of how to get there, surviving, and how to thrive when you get there. And frankly, you need to have the mental magnitude, not because you're a government appointee, they put you in an organization. No, you need to have the intellectual competence and capacity to be the C whatever, be it chief legal, chief executive officer, operations, marketing, whatever it is. You need to have the competence, intellectual heft to do that. And if you grow your mind, then you will get there. There's no question in my mind. If you only grow your mind, if we will only grow our minds. But I know that only 10% of us will grow our minds. The 90% of us will sleep. And that gives us an advantage because you know that out of every 100, only 10 people will be ready to take on that role. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? No questions? Linda, why aren't you asking a question? Linda. Why aren't you asking a question, Linda? I'm going to put people on the spot. Oh. Linda, why aren't you asking a question? Yes.
I'm not asking a question, not because there's nothing to ask. It's just a lot of things running through my mind. But more importantly, the quality of being of a certain age, I must put it that way. Being of a certain age, I'm rather concerned about the quality of young people joining, the quality of education that young people joining the workforce bring to the table. Unfortunately, there seems to be some rush to have it all, but at the same time, not necessarily having the skills, which is to be expected because, of course, most of these skills come with experience. But there seems to be some rush and to be somebody something or whatever. I don't know what. Like I said, I'm of a certain age. But it's quite worrying when even basic tasks cannot be carried out, and more importantly, the language element of things. We are supposed to be an English-speaking country. At least English is the language of business. But people enter the workforce and can't string together a sentence to save their lives. And for me, that's pretty tedious because I'm not in the workplace to anybody English or to write a sentence. So I don't know. I was just wondering about a whole host of things, but for me, that's the problem. So yes, you can hold and whatever. That is a major problem that I see. That's going to affect the quality of work.
Okay, so let me take a comment from Fitnat. Then we'll go to Issy for her too, because she's in academia, so she can directly respond to that. Fitnat, what's your view? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Mute myself. Okay. Okay. I
Yeah.
was trying to unmute myself. Hi.
Sure.
Yes, putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
What's my what?
Do you have any comments to make, views? You and I have worked before. Yeah.
Yes. Your comments on people's willingness to share are very true. They're very accurate. But we don't realize that we are in a boat together, and so we all sink or swim. And so by giving information or knowledge, passing on knowledge, in fact, you're helping yourself. Because as a leader, if you have a team of people and something happens, you are not available, things can continue running. Because you've given them adequate training and guidance to be able to keep things going in your absence. And that's one of the reasons why family businesses and general businesses in Ghana do not grow beyond the first leader. When the leader dies, that's the end of that company. But in other countries, they are able to that they pass on knowledge such that organizations last for generations, many generations, and they grow as they go along from generation to generation. This is one of our problems in Ghana. And I think that if we will stop thinking about the fact that if I pass on the knowledge, it's a disadvantage to me, we'll realize that we are helping ourselves. We're really helping ourselves because we either sink or swim.
Thank you. Madam Issy, can you respond to the concerns that people have of the quality of students who are coming onto the market?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Albright. I quite agree with you on the fact that the quality is gone down somehow. I will not deny that because we even have problems in the classroom when you want to get students to even answer questions, respond. You know, academia is supposed to be an academic discourse in the classroom, but it's very difficult to have that because students come in and they are waiting for you to talk and talk and talk. When you even give them topics to go and research and come and deliver, you realize that they fall short of so many things. And I don't deny the fact that yes, the quality is going down, but I would also not blame those who are tutoring them because there are standards and we are all trying to meet the standard at least because of globalization. We have situations where even lecture notes are monitored. So it's not like we are giving them substandard things to learn in the classroom. Maybe it's just some students who are not really actually living up to expectations. And like you rightly said, most of the students prefer the chew and pour because it makes life easier for them. Most of the MBA students are workers who are coming from work very tired, and they just want you to hurry up for them to go home. You know, when you want to really have a proper discourse with them, it becomes very difficult. They are just not willing to have those things. So we are doing our best, but I can agree with you that yes, the standards have gone down and we really need to do something about it. And when you talk about application, we have to encourage more of these applications, give students project works and cases to work on instead of the normal chew and pour questions that some lecturers will give out because it makes life easier for them. And then the numbers, you have a class, I have had classes that I've taught over 150 MBA classes, and you know, it's not easy. So we are doing our best, but I think the best is not enough and we need to perhaps do more. And I quite agree with Linda about the language bit. We also see it in the classroom. When the foundations are bad, what can you do at that level? At the tertiary level, the foundation is already spoiled. They come in with such bad language, you know, and it's difficult. It is not there that you're going to teach them language. No, it's not the duty of the lecturer to teach you language at that level, at the tertiary level, no. You see, so it's a big issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me say this. If you're an MBA student and you're spending 2 years doing your MBA, and you're spending 20 or 30,000 Ghana doing your MBA, you should look at the return on investment. You should look at opportunity cost. And so even this basic application, you do the MBA not because it's easy, not because you want a paper. It's because you want a set of skills that will prepare you for the workplace. And so if you want easy, then go and do day nursery. But if you want hard, then come and do MBA. That's number one. Number two, when I did law school in England, my first day at law school, they gave us a book on language. They gave us, we'd all finished university. Some had master's degrees, but on the first day, they gave us a book on how to use language, and they recommended Fowler's usage of the English language for all of us to go and buy and read, because they recognized that not all of us had the same level of communication skills. I think that if at the point of the MBA, you detect that a candidate does not have the requisite language skills, then you should not let them out of the school without upgrading their language skills. And I think it will be a travesty for them to have gone through the MBA to come out and not have improved their communication skills, reading and writing, etc. As for the 150 students, that one, I don't see that as too much of a problem if you engage all of them. If they are in sets of maybe 10 and you can engage all of them. We understand that the teaching resources are limited, so they need to be stretched. And I also accept that the smaller the size, the more you can concentrate and focus on your students. So thank you, Madam Esi. Thank you for your transparency, authenticity, and coming out like this. Thank you. It's really helpful for all of us. I saw somebody's hand was up, but that hand has gone down. Cosby. Yeah, Cosby. What did you want to ask? Hello, Cosby. Cosby, sorry, Cosby. Cosby, you're unmuted, so you can speak. Hello, Cosby. Hello, Cosby. Hello, Cosby. Can you hear? Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, you are audible, but Cosby, I think we can hear you. I'm not sure.
You.
Cosby. Cosby, we can't hear you. Do you want to type your question?
Yes, maybe Cosby, you can type your comments in the chat and I'll read them. And I think he will be the last participant, and so we'll wrap this up after Cosby.
Okay. So Fitna, thank you. Madam Esi, thank you. Linda, thank you very much for your comments. Solomon, thank you very much. We're waiting for Cosby. So in the meantime, I'll say that this really is a heartfelt plea to us as leaders. First of all, to grow our minds. Because if we don't grow our minds, then we will not be able to transfer any knowledge. We can't transfer what we don't have. Mark, do you want to speak? Because Cosby.
Yes, whilst we wait for Cosby, I'm just asking, are you able to also share the slides with the participants after the webinar?
The slides will be shared.
That is sharing.
Thank you.
Yes,
of
the
course.
slides will be shared.
All right, thank you very much.
The slides will be shared. If you have left your email address, otherwise leave your email address in the chat and we'll take that and send it to you. The slides will be shared.
Very well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So just 2 points that I wanted to come up on. With regards to knowledge transfer and the level of mind, growing your mind. I think this evening, throughout your presentation, when you ended your presentation, one of the critical things, as Madam Isi was talking about, that I saw that he exhibited also on this webinar this evening, that you ended and started to engage us, but a lot of us were very quiet and reserved as to whether we understood what you shared, as to whether we were willing and ready also to express ourselves and share. Was another thing. But I think you did so well in trying to, take people on the spot to be able to get a few of us to then begin to make comments and contributions to this. And I think that is one of the key things that is impacting our education. Rightly, as Madam Isi said, some of the students that they engage with in classroom are not willing to even express themselves. One, either they are not, they don't have full command of the language to be able to express themselves well. And two, the lecturers are of the opinion that it is not their duty at this level to educate them or to teach them language and communication. And I think to a large extent, that is one of our fundamental problems in this country on our education. The second point I wanted to ask you was directly was on businesses and knowledge transfer, where you have, and I think a couple of points have been made about this, where you have business leaders, business owners, in fact, top managers and owners of private sector. You have other people working with these business owners, and the insecurity in sharing knowledge and sharing information is so high, because one person is thinking, I am giving you all the information to make all the wealth or to make all the money and leave me hanging. The other person is thinking, why should I even give you all the information? You are not going to stay here with me throughout this business. And so the fear of losing out is one of the key things I for one, see that is hampering knowledge transfer in our business community. Now, how can we deal with this fear as business owners and as entrepreneurs as well?
Okay, let me address it straight to the point. The truth of the matter is that a suboptimal mind cannot produce an optimized outcome. suboptimal mind can never produce an optimized outcome. What that means is that you should optimize your workforce, whether they will stay for a day or they'll stay for a week or stay for a year. You should optimize your workforce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Theodore Albright.
So an suboptimized mind can never produce an optimized outcome. So if you want suboptimal outcomes, then you continue to deal with suboptimized minds. If your mind, the mind of the person you're working with, is optimized, then you have half a chance of getting some decent outcomes. So it doesn't matter how long, how short the duration is. You always want to work with the best people. And so if you work with me, I will give you 1,000 articles and I'll give you 100 books to read. And if you decide you will go tomorrow, it's understandable. But it means that during the period that we worked together, at least I had an optimized mind for you to give me optimized outcomes. As for the person, the employee who is working, if you don't demonstrate your ability to deliver where you are, then it'll be very difficult for you to demonstrate where you go elsewhere, because you're now going to learn how to do it. So your best bet is to give up your best where you are, and then when the time comes for you to move on, you move on. If another opportunity comes, then you move on. If they come and they headhunt you, then you go. But at least you would have given your best. When I moved from Opportunity International to Vodafone, there was a critical issue, and that issue was about the setting up of Vodafone Cash. They needed somebody who understood anti-money laundering and who had a long-term experience with anti-money laundering. Fortunately for me, I had trained over 800 people at Opportunity International in AML, anti-money laundering. And prior to that, I'd been an AML officer in England and in Guernsey. So the experiences you have today are the qualities that are going to open doors for you tomorrow. So if you say that I'm not going to give up my best today, then the likelihood is that when the opportunity comes tomorrow, you won't be ready for it or prepared for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What an end to a very great delivery and brilliant forum. Definitely, we need to put out our optimum best, and we can only do that by applying the knowledge we learn and relearn. So at this point, we say a very big thank you to our speaker, Mr. Theodore Albright. Your presentations are always inspiring and thought-provoking. We are grateful for your time, and to all participants, thank you so much for joining the call, for spending time with us, for learning from a great mind, and hopefully we shall implement and put all of this into practice. We shall do our best to search for information, to learn, and to share knowledge. Thank you so much. And once again, we will share the presentation and the recording. So I've taken note as well of the emails you are putting in the chat. I will share the presentation and the recording once it's ready. The presentation I do have, but the recording will be ready after the session ends. Thank you so much, and good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you too.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you
Essie.
very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albright.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Tony.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, David.
Good one,
Thank you,
Theo.
Mark.
Good one, Theo.
Thank you,
Good
Abigail.
one.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Alfred.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Robert. Thanks, Alfred. Thanks, Victor. Thank you, Nee. Thank you, Priscilla.